A single father visits his late wife's grave at Arlington Cemetery with his young daughter. There, he notices a woman in uniform mourning at another grave. A quiet gesture begins something unexpected. The woman, a decorated soldier, writes letters to her deceased husband every week. The single dad starts leaving anonymous notes of encouragement at the grave, until one day she finds out who they're from. An accidental coffee spill sparks a deeper connection between the two. They start talking about grief, duty, and the ache of continuing life after unbearable loss. The wind whispered gently through the endless rows of marble headstones in Arlington National Cemetery, where silence speaks louder than words. It was a place where time felt suspended, where grief and honor existed side by side. Among the thousands of names etched into white stone, 2 new visitors arrived one cold February morning. Will Turner was a single father, having lost his wife Emily to cancer 4 years ago. He was not a man of many words, but his heart was kind and his soul carried the gentle ache of unfinished conversations. Beside him walked his 6-year-old daughter, Ella, who held a bouquet of small daisies wrapped in a pink ribbon. They came every few weeks, just to talk to Emily. Will had adjusted to being a single dad in a world that constantly reminded him of the absence of his wife. Raising Ella alone brought joys and challenges alike, but his daughter gave him purpose and an unbreakable reason to keep moving. Their ritual of visiting Emily had become sacred, a quiet space where healing whispered through flowers and shared silence. As they approached Emily's grave, Ella placed the bouquet with care. "Hi, Mommy," she said softly. Will knelt, brushing frost from the inscription and placing his hand on the stone. "We miss you," he whispered. "She's getting taller. I think you'd laugh at how smart she's becoming." A few rows down, another figure stood quietly. A woman in a sharply pressed army dress uniform. Her posture was rigid but fragile, like a soldier trying to maintain form even as the inside threatened collapse. She stood at attention before a headstone, her hands trembling slightly. Will noticed her as he helped Ella adjust her coat. Ella tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, she looks so sad. Can I give her a flower, too?" Will hesitated. Maybe she wants to be alone. But Mommy would say to be kind. Ella insisted, and Emily would have. So they walked toward the woman. The soldier looked up as they approached, her expression guarded. Will offered a gentle smile. "Sorry to disturb you. My daughter just... She wanted to give you this." Ella extended a daisy. "For your husband." "I'm sorry he's not here." The woman took the flower, her face softening. "Thank you," she said quietly, voice breaking. "He would have liked this." "I'm Will," he said. "And this is Ella." She nodded. "Ava, Sergeant Ava Brooks. My husband, James, was a Marine, Kia in Kabul, 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Will replied. "Emily, my wife, was Navy. We lost her to cancer." The exchange was brief, quiet, but meaningful. That morning, a flower laid between strangers sparked the first ember of a connection that neither expected. Ava returned to Arlington every Sunday. It was her private tradition. She brought a letter, always written by hand, and placed it on James' grave. In those letters, she poured out her thoughts on everything from daily updates to her deepest sorrows. She still wore her wedding ring. Her heart hadn't let go. The next Sunday, she noticed a folded note beside her letter. "Your strength is visible, even in your silence. You're not alone. A friend." She looked around, curious and slightly startled. The note was unsigned. The following week, another appeared. "He would be proud of you, and so are the strangers who see your bravery." Ava began to anticipate the notes. They weren't long, but they carried warmth and validation, and eventually, she caught him in the act. Will stood just a few paces from James' grave one morning, his hand halfway to placing another note. She approached with a knowing smile. "You're the friend." He looked sheepish. "I didn't mean to intrude. I know what it's like to talk to someone who isn't here, to wish for one more conversation." Ava nodded. "The notes helped. I didn't know I needed them." They talked for a while that day. Not long, just enough to exchange a few stories. She learned about Emily. He learned about James. Both of them left that morning with a little less weight on their shoulders. The third time they saw each other, it wasn't at Arlington. It was at a local coffee shop. Pure coincidence. Ava had just picked up her drink when Ella barreled into her legs. "Sorry," the girl chirped, followed by Will, breathless and chasing after his daughter. "I swear she moves faster than light," he said, amused. Ava laughed. "You two again." They ended up sharing a table. Conversation flowed more easily now. They talked about service, loss, parenting, and the surreal normalcy that came after the unthinkable. Will noticed how Ava still avoided talking about her own healing. She was strong, but in the way that looks solid until a storm comes. He offered no advice, just listened. Ava, in turn, admired how Will had rebuilt a life around Ella without letting go of Emily. He honored the past while living the present. Over time, coffee chats became routine, a friendship formed, one forged by pain, empathy, and an unspoken understanding. They never rushed anything. Some wounds needed time, and others never closed, but softened. It was Christmas Eve. Snow blanketed the streets, and soft carols played in the distance. Ava sat alone in her apartment, watching the lights on her modest tree. She held James' last letter in her lap, unopened. She hadn't had the courage. A knock came at the door. When she opened it, she found Adela holding a small box wrapped in red paper. Will stood behind her, smiling gently. "Merry Christmas," Ella beamed. "We made you something." Inside the box was a handmade ornament with James' name carved into wood, wrapped in a golden ribbon. Ava's eyes welled with tears. She didn't speak as she couldn't. She simply pulled Ella into a hug, then looked up at Will. "Thank you, both of you." They didn't stay long, just long enough to share hot cocoa and a few laughs. But something inside Ava shifted that night. The loneliness still existed, but it was no longer suffocating. She had let someone in. Winter faded into spring. Arlington remained a place of quiet remembrance, but for Ava, it also became a symbol of where her second chapter began. She still visited James, still wrote letters, but now, she also shared brunches with Ella and Will. She attended school plays, went on hikes, and slowly, her walls lowered. One warm afternoon, the three of them walked through a park, Will pushing Ella on a swing while Ava watched. The moment was simple, yet in that simplicity, healing bloomed. Later that day, Ava placed her newest letter on James' grave. "I miss you every day," she wrote, "but today I laughed. I think you'd be happy to know that. I think you'd like them." She stood, kissed her fingers, and touched the stone. Then she turned around and found Will waiting, Ella bouncing beside him, waving. Ava walked toward them. Her heart, once broken, now beat with purpose again. Not because the grief had disappeared, but because love had returned in an unexpected form, at an unexpected grave, on a winter morning that changed everything. And all it took was a daisy, a note, and a knock.